breathing.
But always get close. Boom. We're here. We're here. So, as we all know, we're proponents of healing on this podcast. We've had a number of people in the healing space. We've had doctors, we've had yoga instructors, acupuncturists, blah-bitty, all those people. But today we have an inner work healer. Okay? Christina Jogoleff.
Whatever. It's Jogoleff.
Change your last name, dude. How about that? How about don't get at me?
I'm not.
I'm just kidding. I'm sorry.
I have a fun story about that, though.
Okay, tell the fun story about your last name.
Okay, so I used to lecture at UC Riverside, and in my classrooms, I'd have, 90 students or so, and I would learn all of their names. So my thing with them on day one was, you can learn one fucking name, because I'm going to learn all 90 of your names. So it is Ms. Jogoleff. Like Joe go right, Joe go left. But it's hard to
It's hard.
It's hard.
That's a hard one, but it's all good. So tell people, because inner healing coach, very broad. So tell me and tell people what that is, what that looks like.
Okay. Thank you for that question. It's funny because it took me a while to even create a title for myself, because so much of what I do is inner healing work, but a lot of people don't even know what the fuck that means, right? Like, what is inner healing? What is inner? What is healing? What does that look like? Are you a therapist? Are you a counselor? Do you do mental health work? Do you do spiritual work? And it's kind of like, oh, are you a yoga teacher? I'm like, I've never done yoga in my fucking life.
Yeah.
Like, no, I lift weights. That's my therapy. But how I came to that is what I do is I help people make peace with their pains. I help them let go of how traumas limit them, so that when they walk into, whether it's like a boardroom meeting and someone says something, they don't take it personal. They can stay present. They can speak from their power instead of from their pain. Or in their marriages, maybe they've been trailing along some pain from their childhood and saying, I'm this way because my mom or my dad did this to me, or somebody did something to me. And so you just have to basically tend to my fucking problem. And so I hope people let go of that problem and live from a true place of love and forgive themselves and forgive those who have hurt them.
So the first question is, how do you, because so many of us people in the space that we're in, we can identify that stuff. But that takes practice. Emotional intelligence is not something that everybody has. But I understand in the coaching space, someone's coming to you because they know there's something going on. But how do you really identify? How do you identify, and how do you encourage? Really, they would have to, right? Like, how do you encourage them to fully identify where their block is and where their work needs to be done?
It's really, this is going to be like the worst answer, right? Is case by case. Like, I can't give a massive blanket answer to that. There are certain things that might encourage that, but really, I create a safe space that's non-judgmental. And because I share my pains with everyone that I work with, it kind of like helps them put their guard down, that they're really like, all right, I actually can share something with this woman that I haven't told 4 other therapists I've worked with for the past 10 years. And when they just feel safe. So one, it's about really living from a place of love and non-judgment, so that anyone who, as we were talking before we started, is like, you live from this very authentic space, right? So if I can show up authentic, it allows people to take off their own veil.
For real, yeah.
Right? And so to help them dive towards the pain is, at first, a lot of times, like, I had this one woman come to me and just every time she would speak, she was just like crying.
Yeah.
So we can't dive into the pain if you're so fucking hurt. Like, we just cannot. So initially, when someone comes to me in that state, it's about reminding her how to just like love herself. So I might give her some activities like, write down what you love about yourself. What she's going to realize is that she doesn't fucking love herself. And she's like, I could only come up with 2. I'm like, that's great. Let's do a little bit more. And so I might give her another assignment. So it's about getting her back into alignment with some type of happiness before we can then do the digging into the trauma.
Got you. So we're gonna break that. There's 2 questions. So are you providing like exercises as they go? Are they checking you? How many days a week are they in contact with you? Are they in contact with you the whole time, like every day, depending on needs? Or so that's the first question. So are you providing assignments? And I forgot my second question. I'll remember in 2 minutes. So I answer the first question.
Perfect. Yeah. So I have a few different ways that I work with people. The first way is it's a 90-day program. And so
That was my second question. There you go.
Checking in pretty much daily and helping them just learn how to actually honor their feelings, because like we don't know how to feel in this world.
Explain to people honor their feelings, because this is so. We were just speaking about buzzwords when we
Fuck yes, I use a lot of them.
So no, and so do I.
Check me on them, so for real.
No, so do I. So do I. It's the nature of the space that we're in. It really is. Explain to people what that phrase means to you.
That it's okay to be fucking angry and nothing's wrong with you. So like really what led me to this work was I went through a lot of pain. We can dive into that. I'm going to just glaze over some of that real quick and then I went through my own healing space, right? Went through like Reiki and meditation and had all of these different things. And then in the new age, what I call it, new age spiritual world, there's this like addiction to positivity.
I love it.
And I was like, but sometimes I'm upset.
It's not always like that. It's really not like that's that manufactured positivity I was talking about. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so for me, honoring your feelings is knowing that there's nothing wrong with you. If you're pissed the fuck off, or if you're sad, or if you're frustrated, it's what you do in that space, right? So I am someone who has a lot of like anger issues or anger management issues. I've now learned to listen to my anger, and I'm empowered by my anger, and I can manage it, I guess you would say, but I'm no longer physically hurting other people. I'm no longer like physically hurting myself. I'm no longer like, I don't yell. So I'll give a specific example. The other day, I was really upset at my man. So it was the end of the day and I was being very serious with him and I asked him like how his day was. And then he said something super sarcastic, but because I was so serious, shit went way over my head. Missed the sarcasm completely. He thought it was like hilarious and I'm pissed the fuck off. Super angry, so angry. But I didn't yell at him. There was no going into the other room and having an attitude. It didn't spill or poison the rest of our household.
Yeah.
Right? Like wasn't snapping at my son, wasn't like forcing him to get ready for bed faster or like things that I would have done in the past, right? But he knew I was upset. He could tell I was angry, like extremely angry. And so tools in that moment is breathing deep.
Yeah.
That's like the number one tool for like any processing is really taking
People find that so patronizing, but it fucking works. Like when someone told me like, and when I put my book out, that's like the first step of the book is just square breathing or organized breathing just to self-soothe. That's the beginning stages of a meditation practice. People don't realize that like you're taking the steps there, but it seems so patronizing because it's like, don't you know that I'm fucking going crazy? Like to breathe and oversimplify my problem by telling me to breathe. People don't like that, but there's so much value and so much substance in just taking in some clean breaths, blowing that bullshit out, and just getting more oxygen to your body. Just,
Breath is life. We come into this world with one breath and we leave with one breath. So like take those fucking breaths.
Yeah.
Like, and not up here, like
fully in the gut and
all the way through, like envision, like sometimes when I'm taking my 3 deep breaths to like shift my energy, and it's not about moving away from my anger, but breathing it in.
Yeah.
Like, let me actually feel this in my body. So I envision like oxygen or light coming in and filling up my entire body like you would fill up your car with gas, like whatever image comes to mind for you, right? And so I took those 3 deep breaths right there in front of him, went on with the rest of our evening. My son went to bed, he went to bed, and then I was like time for me to face my shit. So like I went to journal, I went to cry, I went to like feel the fucking pain and like feel my anger for him. And then I was like, I'm good.
Yeah.
Like I'm great. So then in the next day over lunch, which we don't always get to have lunch together, I let him know how I actually felt and what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And now that's moving from like anger, processing all of what I was feeling to now being vulnerable with my partner about what I was really feeling and how I really wanted to act so that they could see like, oh, that's maybe the monster you were before me.
Yeah. That takes a lot of humility. That takes a lot of humility. And it sounds like after a difficult moment, it actually sounds like it got more productive. It actually came out. I tell my girl that all the time. Like, why we just went around this fucking circle and we could have just ended up in this productive space.
Oh, spiraling's easy.
Yeah, it's super easy. It's super easy to stay in that destructive space. But then you do the work that you're doing, and I think I've done some of this work in a different way, where you're able to be self-aware and to be emotionally intelligent and like track that stuff and nip it in the bud, before you get into that spiral, because that's destructive, and we carry that from relationship to relationship. I know before I started really focusing on emotional well-being, I brought that since junior high school in relationships, brought that along and, along with me the whole way. And men and women do it, and we say he was a narcissist. No, like you're both just toxic.
Both.
And you're both, and you've been bringing this everywhere, and it takes intention and effort to break that cycle. And that sounds like the shit you do.
That's like all that I do.
Yeah. So do you work with men and women?
I love working with men. Men are like, for the longest, I did not like women. That sounds horrible, but now I work with a lot of women, and I think it's been the shift that happened was the reason why I liked working with men was I could tell them something and they'd be like, bet, done. I'm going to do it no matter how hard it is.
Yeah.
Women, right? So if I told you like, go drink some blue water and you'd be like, cool, I'm going to drink this blue water and it's going to make me more peaceful, whatever, right? Where a woman, I'd be like, go drink this blue water. And she's like, I poured the blue water, but then I decided I should add some green to it and some purple. And so now I drank that and I just don't know why I'm so upset. Like, bitch, I fucking told you to like do this assignment. And now you're giving me a reason as to why you didn't do it.
Yeah.
So now we have to dive into
what's stopping you from fucking taking direction? Like, why can't you, not direction, suggestion. I made the suggestion. Why the fuck did you make all these steps? I experienced that too in coaching as well.
It's like, okay, this is what you keep telling me is the problem, isn't the fucking problem. You're showing me what the problem is, and now we're going to dive into that, and you're going to like probably not like me initially, and then afterward, you're going to love me because I helped you see yourself. Yeah,
that's hard. It takes humility on both. So what's a typical problem someone comes to you with?
Oh,
like,
God.
Like typical. So is it like I just went through a divorce, or is it I just lost, someone with a death, or, what is the typical for man or a woman? What's the typical issue?
Okay. I'm glad we broke it down by gender. Men, breakups, for sure. And either just coming out of a breakup or helping them through a breakup. Like really coaching them through, like, homie, it's okay to break up with this woman. Like, y'all spent this many years together. It's okay.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay.
Yeah.
And then with women, it's the body hate. Mm-hmm. It's the not speaking up for the self. It's the constantly giving to everybody else.
Yeah.
So that would be a part of like codependency, right? Because some people think codependency is like, I can't live without the other person. No, codependency is putting yourself on the back burner all the fucking time.
Yeah, people pleasing. Yeah, I understand.
And so with women, it's really learning that it's not selfish to take care of yourself.
Yeah, I feel that. So tell me and tell people, because all this, I know this for a fact, because I hate to generalize. Let me catch myself. All the healers that I've worked with and I've spent time with and have gotten to know, it usually comes from somewhere. It comes from something whether it be child. It doesn't have to always be majorly traumatic, but a friend of mine was like, she was like, I was in marketing, working in marketing in New York City, making a ton of money. I just was not fulfilled. So I said, I'm going to move to Hawaii, do a silent retreat, and then become a yoga instructor. Like, but her suffering was, you know, kind of a internal suffering. What's your pain that made you get into this work? Because you have to know your own pain in order to help somebody with theirs.
For sure. I grew up with pain, and I think what makes me I know what makes me different as a healer and the work that I do is I'm not scared of pain, because I grew up in a community where death was normal. Like, violent death was normal. I had been to more funerals for murders by the time I was 15 than I had baby showers.
Yeah.
Right? Like, really let that sink in.
Yeah.
And that, like, the men in my family had murdered people or who had been murdered themselves, right? And so this way of life that I thought was normal made me very apathetic. And then, so the idea that I would now be someone who's like, honor your feelings is hilarious.
Yeah.
Because I was Miss Don't Feel Shit.
Mike Tyson said it took a lot of violence to get this soft. And for me, that's how my life was as well. It was a lot of people were dying and overdosing and fighting and, you know, brawls in the street. It was just so much fucking like violent chaos and tragedy that it just made my healing process just made me way more empathetic and way more just a soft person, because I saw what tough and hard did to the people around me and did to me, and I did to other people. It was just it was so destructive. But continue with what that was like for you.
So growing up in that, I thought toxicity was normal, like really, really normal. Really normal. Like, I just thought it was normal to yell. I thought it was normal to hurt people when you're hurt. I thought it was normal to, grew up with a narcissistic father. So again, that labeling, what that means is that not until recently has my dad even told me he's proud of me. And that's been a lot of like us being vulnerable and growing together, right?
Do you think that's narcissism, or do you think that that's old school?
It's both.
My dad has only told me that he's proud of me 3 times, and I like do backflips when he tells me, because I'm like, I know this motherfucker means it, because he does not say that shit. But I don't always think that I think that's just the way people grew up, especially for parents seeing us in like a more subjective space. You know, instead of like,
sure.
if I was a doctor, he would have been like, of course, I'm proud. You know, you're a doctor. But in the space that I'm in, it's very abstract. So he's like, I don't know, you're probably not even doing anything. So it's, you know what I mean? But anyway, do you think that's fully narcissism on your dad's part, or just old school?
I think it's both. I think it's a product of him not healing from his own shit from his childhood, of having like an abusive alcoholic father, and then him himself becoming that.
Yeah.
And then in that becoming, he did check himself. So we had this like shift in childhood that went from like having 2 parents who, my parents are still married, so that I'm very blessed, right? But witnessing physical abuse, witnessing yelling, witnessing my mom disappearing for 3 days because she's gonna go get high on who knows what.
Yeah.
Not weed, obviously, if you're disappearing for 3 days. And them choosing to, after one of my uncles was murdered, to like walk away from that life, it's not easy to go through recovery. So like your children go through it with you.
For sure.
Right? Like they're like, and at different ages. So like my older brother was in high school, and he was like, he left. He was like, fuck this. I used to get away with everything. Now you guys actually want to pay attention to me? No, thank you.
Yeah.
Like, no, thank you. I'm out of here. And me and my younger brother were in elementary school. And so we were a part of the whole like shift. And so what my parents did was shift their addiction and like abusive substances to an addiction of like church.
Yeah.
Which is normal.
Yeah, that happens.
A lot.
Yeah.
So then it became like really controlling
Repressive.
us.
Yeah.
To conform to this new religion. And I am very strong-willed.
Yeah.
Like, So for me, it was like, I fought it. And my younger brother was like, stop fighting it. He was like, just do shit like behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Like, just, you're making it worse. And I'm like, I don't think Dad should talk to us like that.
Yeah.
He's like, just shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
So after a few incidences with my dad, I decided to like, all right, sometimes I can play the part. But what that led to is like, as soon as I could, I would left their house. I was like, I'm out of here. I'm on my own. I'm never coming back. And I was also like involved in my own little drama. And so my parents didn't know the depth of it, right? So like in one space, I was this like super going church girl because that's what my parents wanted. And then at school, I was one way. And we were bussed out of our neighborhood so that because my parents didn't want us to go to the school in our neighborhood. So we were bussed out to a better school. And then, so an okay student there. And then I had a really good student in high school. And then I shifted in like 10th grade. It was like, I got involved with people who were involved in gangs, and that was my life, right? It was very much a part of like that time period is when your identity forms. And so much of what I became conscious and aware of was that lifestyle. And so I had a lot of rage from my household, from hide. It's like it's that constant hiding from the self. So like you channel that shit somewhere. Yeah. So I was channeling it at parties, channeling it with my friends, channeling it in, gang activity or whatever. And my boyfriend at the time caught a case. And so what that means is that he was going to be incarcerated if we didn't like get the fuck out. So it was about moving him out of San Diego. And so moved him out of San Diego. That same year, my younger brother was facing 25 to life and he was only 17 being tried as an adult. So what that did for me was like, and the missing factor here was that I graduated from high school and my dad was like, you have to pay rent. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
Why? What is that?
Yeah.
And he's like, well, if you are in college, you don't have to pay rent. So I had not planned on going to college. I did not get good grades to go. I barely graduated high school. So I was like, well, if I don't have to fucking pay rent for these next few months while I'm in his house before I leave, I'll go to the community college. I enrolled, like the very last day, had to walk into City College, and there aren't many classes open. So the classes and I remember this, like I remember walking in, I remember registering for Chicano studies that was open, health was open, and like communications, right? So like a speech class. So I took those 3 classes. It was like the first time I got A's. So I felt fucking good. And it was like, no one here can tell that I'm part Mexican. So it was a space where in Chicano studies, I was learning about history that my dad and my family told me about. So I was like, amazing, right? Like none of this is new to me. Like I am blessed that my family, while they weren't always amazing, they also were very activist, right? Very much a part of the creation of Chicano Park. And my father worked with Cesar Chavez. So like, they worked for like immunization drives. Even though we had all of this shit going on, they were still always giving in the community. So like that was a part of how I was raised. So Chicano studies was amazing. Health is super fucking easy. Like eat your vegetables and work out and you get a fucking A. And speech was a place where you could write these speeches and talk about something you cared about. So the things I wrote about were about policing and incarceration and the impact that I saw that had on my community. So it just opened up a whole new door for me that I could channel the rage that I had on the streets or in my community or in my family into academia. And I fucking soared. I got straight A's. I went on to transfer to UC Santa Cruz and graduated magna cum laude, like fucking nerd. Like went from like barely graduated high school, crazy girl, to she's getting all of these awards at school. Yeah. But the non-traditional route to the university. And then after that, I went to graduate school, still doing way too much. Yeah. But it was in that space lots of different abusive relationships in the meantime, and working with formerly incarcerated women. So helping them with like reentry programs and empowering them, and along with like self-help and mental health, right? I ended up in an abusive relationship. And I wanted to know, for me, how someone who, and I hid it because I couldn't let anybody fucking know, right? So that same pattern from when I was a child of hiding now is like, that's the pattern that I have, is hiding from myself, which we could dive into like more inner work of where that actually, it's not, I don't have to hide it. So as I dove into this inner healing work, I did not know this when I was like hiding from things, where this actually came from. As you dive deeper into this inner healing work, and part of what I do is like hypnosis and things like that. So I was in like a meditation for myself, and went back to the first time somebody hurt me. And the moment that took me back to was when I was 3 years old, and my dad had took my mom down to the ground. And I remember like seeing it all and running and hiding behind the counter. And I realized at that moment that that's what I developed, the pattern and the behavior to run and hide from myself more than anything.
That's deep.
Right? Like run and hide, that's what I would do from like anything else. But the most important thing was that I was running and hiding from who I truly am. And so I have this habit, like hide. No one can know what's really fucking going on in here. Nobody can know. And the reason why I would end up in abusive relationship or toxic relationship after toxic relationship was like, you can't hurt me as much as I hurt myself.
Yeah.
Like I'm not nice to this lady, like at all. Like I hate her. Yeah. So like, try me, right? That's definitely not who I am now, but that is what it was then. And I couldn't identify it as such, right? Because when you're in your bullshit, you can't identify it as such, as you mentioned earlier. When people come to me, it's not like they're like, okay, so I'm really insecure. Like usually they think they're super fucking confident. Yeah. And then after working together, they're like, oh, fuck me. Yeah. Like you hit something that I didn't even want to face. Yeah. Like, that's what I do. But anyways, in graduate school, I ended up in this toxic relationship, and I had already received my master's. I was working on my PhD, and I wanted to know why the fuck, how the fuck did someone like me who teaches like healing, who teaches women's empowerment, who teaches like, who's in all of these spaces, yet I myself am supposed to be educated, empowered, and I'm in a relationship where I'm getting thrown on the ground and I have scars on my chin, or I have to wear long sleeve shirts because I have bruises on my arm. And it took me getting pregnant to wake me up of like, I didn't have the strength to leave for me. Like I didn't value myself enough. It took getting pregnant, and then, so my man is not my son's father. Getting pregnant to see, like, I didn't want my son to see that as normal. Yeah. So like I didn't have the strength for me. And then that's what really started shifting things for me. And I just dove deep into healing my shit.
Do you think that was your bottom? That was going to be my next question. Well, because on the last podcast I just did right before you came on, pain is a motivator for so many of us. It's shame and guilt. And as a drug addict, as a heroin addict, there was a point in my addiction where I was like, no, this is the end of this. It can get, the only thing left to do is die here. That was my pain. And then that propelled me to do whatever was suggested in order to change. What was your bottom, that just said, where this is like, I'm going to go into this next phase of development that ends where you end up here on a podcast talking about being a coach? Like, what was the bottom for you?
Yeah, I definitely don't think ever in my life that I'd be the woman that I am. Like, no way. Yeah, so that, if there was like a moment, but even in that moment, I don't think I thought it was my bottom. I just knew that like, I'm not doing this shit anymore.
There you go. That's
right.
That's probably,
like,
that's it.
So I think I was 7 months pregnant, and my son's father I've never told this shit publicly. And it's not that I'm hiding it. It's just that, like, for the longest, I wanted to protect his name and not shame him. But it's a part of both of our stories that you have to own your shit, right? And so I was 7 months pregnant. We had went to the hospital because you know how they like make you do the little tour, so you know like where to show up and all that stuff. So things had always been horrible in that relationship, but this night's not any different. It's pretty fucking horrible. And like, he's not even walking next to me when you're in a tour with like 12 other couples or 6 couples or whatever. He's like purposely like walking on the opposite end. I'm like, oh my God, this is so embarrassing, right? And just horrible.
It's just making me think the stuff that women deal with, dude, this stuff is so fucked up because you're 7 months pregnant, about to give birth. You poop this thing out of your body. You're about to go through one of the most transformative, traumatic things that you could experience. Traumatic, not necessarily in a bad way, but it's a trauma. It's a legit trauma. Yeah, some huge shit's about to happen, and this motherfucker's just disrespecting the fuck out of you.
So pissed.
I'm only saying this because when I criticize,
you can see it because you've been it.
Because I've been it. When I criticize men, it's not being like a feminist, because I can't be a feminist being the way I've been, but I criticize men doing that because I know what I feel like after doing that. And it's just like, we are scumbags. Dudes are scumbags to women. Not every guy, but fuck, man, that's difficult. So I'm gonna just affirm that.
Yeah. Again, this can happen to anybody, right? Like, I had a master's. I had been doing work in the community. It's not like we're immune to pain or to addiction or to abuse, right? So because I was internally abusing myself, that it was okay for me to receive this type of treatment or to like explain it away, which is my thing, is like constantly explaining away. It's like, oh, well, he was drunk that time that he hit me, so.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And then it happens again and again. Right? Or he was just so angry he didn't realize what he was doing. It's like, no. Like, no. There's no explanation. However, so super pregnant and he's acting a fool in the whole thing. And we walk back to the car in the parking lot and he got angry. I don't know what the trigger was, but so angry to the point of not knowing what he was doing. And I wanted to get out of the car and he wouldn't let me out of the car. And so he started running red lights and I was like, I'm fucking done. Like, no, like there's no comeback from this one, homie. Like, I'm sorry, sir.
Yeah. You gotta go.
Yeah. So I knew that I couldn't, by then it had already, I had already figured out that you can't talk to someone when they're angry. Because before I used to like
try to solve a fucking problem while people are angry
or drunk.
I do that shit too. Or I used to. Now when my girl's mad, I'm just like, all right, you stay over there.
Go be mad.
We'll talk about it later. Or maybe not talk about it at all. Maybe just let you go through that experience and it's hard not to take that personal. And I only started doing that maybe 3 months during quarantine. I had to learn that we're both going to ebb and flow in this, like being together this much. So when I can't take it personal every time you're in a bad mood. So just don't take it out on anybody. As long as you don't take it out on anybody, be all the butthurt you.
Yeah, like when I was angry the other night. It's like, it's okay to be angry, but like, don't fucking poison us.
Exactly. Don't fucking funk up the whole house with that shit.
And it's empowering, right? Yeah. Like, it's okay to be sad, but like, don't spill it on us.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's cool. I don't expect you to be happy all the time.
Yeah.
And you have to say that to yourself too.
And you have to see, that's important to say
not
out
just
loud.
To the other person. Like, I have to, like, I got to do sometimes the mirror work.
Yeah.
Right? Like, look myself in the mirror and tell myself, and I'm not one to be like, say it out loud. Like, say it in your fucking head. We all hear all the voices in our heads, right? And so I do think mirror work is very important. Like, I tell myself what I'm proud of. I tell myself I forgive myself. Like, I make small promises to myself, and when I need to, and how I know when I need to is when I've been irritable, or I've been focused on the lack, or I've been angry. And it's like, you know what? Something's off here. I'm not filling my cup. I'm not filling my spirit.
Yeah, I'm not meeting my needs. Yeah. I tell myself, like, when I'm starting to seek other people meeting needs, and when I'm becoming disappointed, I'm like, okay, I'm not feeding myself. I'm not feeding myself, because if I'm feeding myself, no one has to tell me nothing. No one has to tell me I'm great. No one has to, you know what I mean? I can meet my own needs. And when you're not doing that, you're having conflict with others, having conflict with your partner, because you're placing expectations on them that they're not meant to fulfill those expectations. That's your own responsibility. So continue to tell me more about this. What happened after this day where you said no, sir? What happened after that day? Because you've gotten
Shit got worse.
Shit got worse.
I mean, better for me, but like,
Okay.
He became crazier. And I'm so thankful for it now. Like, so thankful, because I really learned, and I'm still learning, but like, he gave me my life purpose, was like to constantly be faced with someone who is truly unhealthy, like mentally unstable, unhealthy, and toxic, and hurt. Because he's still in my son's life, right? But I still deal with this same person. Like, that person
he's
who...
the same.
He's the same.
Yeah.
Well, and so I had to really learn how to set boundaries.
Yeah.
And what that really looks like.
Yeah.
When one person is stable and the other person is not. So anyways, I ended it there, but not that night. So it was the next day that I was like, just so you know, like, we are done. You can be in your son's life. You can be there at the hospital, like, be there, right? But like, you and I are not a you and I. And that really hurt him. Like, to him, I am now forever a liar, because I told him I wanted to be with him forever. We all fucking do that.
Yeah.
Like, and we mean it. Like, no one's like blowing smoke up someone's ass when they're like, I want to be with you forever.
You mean it in that moment.
You mean it. Yeah. Like, I wanted to be with you, homie. And I mean, it got so bad. So I ended up giving birth to our son just a few weeks later. So he was premature. And his father showed up after he was born. So I let him know as soon as my water broke. He just like took his sweet ass fucking time. And if anyone knows, when you give birth, it's not like, oh, water breaks, boom, here it comes. Like, this shit's for like hours.
Yeah, my girl was in labor for 24 hours.
Like, it's a long time. So showed up thinking he had 24 hours. And he didn't. And I think it was like, mine was fairly quick because it was a preemie. My son was tiny. He was like 5 pounds when he was born. I think it was about 7 hours total for me. And showed up at the hospital. Because our son was a preemie, there for like extra time because, you know, it wasn't a normal birth. And it was bad in the room, so much so that like they sent a social worker into my room and was like, honey, this is an abusive relationship. Again, I tried to explain it away. Like, nah, like, no, that's not what this is. And she's like, honey, we see this all the time. Yeah. Like, you need to go to the police, or you need to go get like a restraining order, like all of these things. And I just was like flustered and my research is on anti-incarceration, anti-policing. So I was like, no, I'm not going to the police. Like, no, I'm not, I don't do that. We don't do that where I come from. Yeah. And I'm not doing that. And when he came back into the room after that, I let him know that like, look, I'm being advised to do this. So that just, he blew up even more and left. Thank God he left, because they basically were like, if he keeps acting crazy, like security's going to escort him out.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay. So you either get it together or fucking leave. And he left.
Yeah.
He should have got it together, but that's okay. No regrets.
No.
But
He wasn't capable.
he wasn't at all. And when I told him to come back so that we could leave the hospital, like a day later, of like, okay, you need to come like sign the birth certificate, he would MIA. So he didn't sign our son's birth certificate. So then we went through the battles of like custody and court and parental rights. And I just was nice time and time again to really learn how to stand in my power.
Yeah.
Like, that's really what it was. And so now it's about working together, but without sacrificing who I am. And requires constantly checking in with the self, constantly being self-aware, constantly reminding myself who I'm actually working with. It to not be fooled, because there'd be so many times I'd be like, oh my God, he's finally like growing and changing, and we're gonna like not like be a happy family, but like we get to actually work together like healthy-minded, rational people.
Yeah. No.
No.
Didn't happen like that.
Still not like that. Like no. I still get threats on my phone.
Oh no.
Like,
Yo.
he can't even text me. Like the courts have now, they've seen this time and time again, right? And it's not about me playing the victim here. Like I was just as toxic, right? Like you said earlier, it's like we were toxic. We were toxic. And the courts are not amazing at all, but they have set up certain things to help deter things from getting worse when they recognize toxicity.
Yeah.
Right? So like one of the things is like we have to communicate on this app.
Yeah. Talking Parents.
Yep, we're on Talking Parents. Thank goodness we're not on the other one. Yeah. The other one's more expensive and like codes your aggression. I was like, that's too mean. Yeah. Red, cannot send.
Yeah. So the end of this relationship sounds like the catalyst. Before you got fully into doing this work with others, what did it look like? What's the beginning of this work look like for you? Like it's interesting for me. I started out as a personal trainer, taught like shitty classes in fucking little gym, and was a shitty trainer. And like that was the beginning of my thing, where subsequently now I do this bigger thing that I just didn't know what it was going to look like before. So what was the beginning of your phase of your business?
Very, very similar to you. It was like body care for moms.
Yeah.
So I used to like, started with Beachbody, then started doing my own, like creating my own fitness programs and nutrition programs for moms at home.
Yeah.
And for working moms in particular. And body care led to personal development, which led to learning more about my background, like my academic background, is in like critical feminist like psychoanalysis, so critiques of psychology, and feminist studies and ethnic studies and politics. It's like all whatever. But so I did have a background in mental health, and I worked with children in mental health. But it was really like going through it myself, right? So it wasn't like, oh, I just became this like fitness person and then I became this personal development person. It was like then also taking my education, right? Yeah. Then also taking my pain, then also taking my community work and creating something else.
I think fitness is such a foundational piece in personal development, because you learn that I'm going to eat right and I'm going to train and I'm going to sleep and I'm going to do the next indicated step, and then I'm going to change. And that's what it is in most aspects of life. A client working with you, you provide suggestions, they do the next indicated step, and at the end of their 90 days, they have made a change. And that's what it's like in life. It's just a perfect analogy for life. So I think fitness is a great place for people to start. I always say that was my first introduction to personal development, and taught me just do the next right thing. And I'm a different person because of it. And I've ended up in the career that I'm in doing this podcast, all because of just learning those simple principles then years ago. So I'm gonna ask you a few things. What's your ultimate goal? Like what? Not like the lofty one, but like because everybody has like I want to live in that lofty one. I want to talk about like the practical. Like if you tell me like I want to work with X amount of women in order to what? What like I want to work with these men and women in order to finish the sentence. In order to.
So like my lofty goal is very much intertwined into why I do what I do. So like instead
that was
of
the next question.
Okay.
Why?
So why I do what I do is that I believe that it's possible to create a world without prisons. But I think before, right, so much of my work was focused on that which was outside of me and fighting the system that created incarceration. Now what I do is dismantle the ways we incarcerate ourselves.
Oh, bars.
So
that's going to be a clip right there. Just letting you know. Soundbite. You got that.
But like, no, for reals. It is why I do what I do is like, when I learned that, and not even learned, when I fucking experienced, because there's something different about knowing and doing, right? When I experienced for myself and the people that I work with, that you can stop yourself before hurting someone.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's so liberating.
Yeah.
It's true freedom.
Yeah.
Right? And so for me, it is about dismantling the prison system. But to do that, a part of that is dismantling the internal prison system. Mm-hmm. And so for me, my goal is to, I'm like in this transition period where I want to move to Georgia. So I currently work with a couple of different organizations and I have my own practice and clients. And so for me, it's just about actually shifting the policing and incarceration systems now. So I do work with an organization that is inside CDCR and we do self-development. We do inner healing work. We run a 12-week program with the men who are incarcerated and teach them how to heal from their fucking trauma so that when they get out, they don't have to carry this shit with them.
Yeah.
Right? And right now, definitely have not shared this publicly. Will be working with the local sheriff's department and teaching them, like with the deputies, teaching mindfulness and inner healing, because we have to recreate the relationship
with the community.
Fucking with the community so bad.
Yeah,
like
that's when people talk about defunding the police, I think it's reappropriation of funds, but I think part of that reappropriation of funds is investing in the well-being of the police officers who want to do the job.
Without a doubt. It's not just about putting the money into the community. That is important, but they're hurting too.
They need, it's interesting because they need more training, less tanks and AR-15s, more training, which is an interesting conversation. We've done this on this podcast. So we're not even going to go down that route. But let me ask, does raising a black son influence the work that you're doing?
No one has ever asked that question. And I think they haven't asked that question because I grew up in a black and brown neighborhood, right? And so my consciousness, or whatever the fuck you want to call it, was always at the forefront and what I was fighting against, right? In particular, fighting against anti-black racism, because that is like, no one's free until everybody's free, the cheesy fucking line, but like for reals.
Yeah.
And in the spiritual sense, right, there's a Mayan phrase called in Lakesh. Have you heard this before?
No.
So in Lakesh is, you are my other me. We are literally one and connected. So if I cause harm to you, I am harming myself.
Gotcha.
But if I love and respect you, I am loving, respecting myself. And so for me as an inner healing coach, or whatever the fuck that is flipping it. If I harm myself, I am harming my son.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Really, right? Every time I have a negative thought that I want to, whatever the negative thought is, I am harming everyone who's energetically connected to me. But if I love and respect myself, that is all that I have to give.
Yeah.
And so I really do believe self-love is the way to heal generational wounds. Now, my son, what he has helped me with is not seeing his pure joy and love has taught me how to love myself.
Yeah.
And I want him, especially as a young Black king, to be more in tune to his joy and his love, because when he goes out into that world, they will rob him of it.
Yeah.
So my role as his mom, who's white-skinned, isn't about making sure he's tough enough for the world. It's ensuring that he knows who the fuck he is so that when he steps out, he's not swayed.
Yeah. Bars. So we're going to wrap it up because so what's dope about this podcast is that you came on here as like, okay, I want to talk to a coach, right? I love to talk to coaches, but you just represented a story that I think needs to be represented in real time and consistently. The abuse women deal with, especially for the duality of this conversation, me being a toxic ass, abusive ass dude in my past. We were selling dope. And
all the things that come with it.
So being a shitty dude goes with that. And I have to understand that about myself. So having this conversation, you and I having this conversation, from me being your son's father, being that person, you sharing that experience, is something that's valuable that people need to hear. And they don't need to hear it once. They need to hear it over and over and over again to really drive home what women are experiencing. I don't even think women really perceive what they're experiencing.
No, we don't.
I don't think it's being sexualized as young as who knows how young, and then dealing with toxic men, and sometimes they're good guys, but you have to have this discernment and you're expected to just know, and sometimes you don't know, and sometimes you have a baby with this person. Now it's this fucking pressure that women are dealing with that I don't think that we give enough fucking value to. And you shared that experience here and you shared that story. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you for opening the space.
Yeah. So if you have any parting thoughts and encouragement to leave people with, I want you to leave that encouragement, and your Instagram is going to be right there. If you have a website, plug your website.
Yeah, words of encouragement. Wow, that's pretty broad, homie.
Well, be free. Be free.
I think knowing that you are enough. The number one thing that knocks me or knocks anybody that I work with is the deep-rooted issue is feeling like we are not enough. And the more you begin to believe that and dive into that and truly understand that you don't have to do shit to be enough. Like, you are as you are, right? You are not what you have done. You're not what has been done to you. You get to literally step forward as if you had amnesia. You are enough, right? You are not dope dealing homie. Like, that's not you. Like, I'm not the female who stabbed her man. Like, that's not who I am.
Yeah.
That's what I did.
Yeah.
We're not what we did. And so my website is Xtina Jerry, Xtina Geri. I'm named after St. Gerard. Catholic mother. .net. And you are enough. Like, don't ever let anyone tell my son he's not enough.
Yeah.
Like, that's really what it is. And he reminds me of that he was born enough.
For sure.
And I needed to see that in myself.
Thank you. I needed that today. That's good. We're going to wrap it up. So thank you again for coming on here and sharing that.
Thanks for having me.
All right.
Vultures circling above, they all in a piece, but they don't even know my name. Won't get even the swipe for the train. Cloudy, ride to the airport, gotta get right for the plane. Custom, smell like kush, wifey hand in a tish. Yes, and I got no shame. Some line to shine, with a broke you, they got no game. Waking up next to the scats, can't go home to a dame. Nah, tell them sell to the same. Really though, who can they blame? Now I don't blame them either. They just wanna play the game and they're eager still. I don't wanna know you, I'm busy, you don't even know that.